You know, it seems like every single time you open a social media app these days, someone is just shouting at you.
Yeah, usually from the front seat of a rented supercar.
Right, exactly. And they're like holding up a phone with the stock chart that just goes straight up.
Yeah.
They tell you that if you just follow their one simple trick, you'll be a millionaire by Tuesday.
It creates this really overwhelming expectation,
Yeah.
you know, that wealth is supposed to be fast and flashy and just virtually effortless,
Yeah, effortless.
which is an incredibly seductive illusion. I mean, we are biologically wired to look for the shortcut, the
Yep.
magic bullet, right?
Mm.
The overnight
No,
success.
for sure.
So when someone presents this highly produced video showing a lifestyle of just absolute freedom,
Mm.
it bypasses our critical thinking completely and goes straight to our desires.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, when you finally put your phone down and look at your actual bank account and you stare at your actual monthly bills, that flashy formula feels just entirely disconnected from reality.
100%.
You step into the real world of managing your own money, and the landscape is suddenly very, very murky. So today, our mission is to cut through that deafening noise of, get-rich-quick schemes and establish a rock-solid baseline for your financial literacy.
Which is so desperately needed right now.
It really is. And we are pulling insights today from a really comprehensive 3-part video series by a YouTube channel called Life.Lessons.
Yeah, they do a great job.
They really do. Their focus is heavily on the granular mechanics of financial mistakes, budgeting, saving, and investing, specifically tailored for beginners who are just starting to earn a steady paycheck.
And the underlying philosophy in this source material is, well, it's what makes it so practical. Managing money isn't just about math, it's about behavior.
Mm.
And above all, it's about patience.
Patience, yeah, the boring stuff.
Exactly. I mean, the numbers on a spreadsheet matter, absolutely. But your psychological approach to those numbers is what dictates whether you actually build wealth or just kind of, cycle through stress month after month.
Yeah, and if you listening have ever sat down, looked at your finances, and felt entirely overwhelmed by the jargon, or just felt this sinking feeling that you're somehow falling behind your peers, take a breath. We are going to dismantle that anxiety today.
Step by step.
Right. But before we can talk about growing your wealth, we really have to talk about protecting it first. We need to identify the immediate dangers lurking on our screens and, honestly, in our own daily habits.
The traps are literally everywhere. And the source material starts right there, highlighting this deliberate illusion of fast money.
Like the crypto bros.
Right. We're talking about multi-level marketing schemes, shady cryptocurrency groups, unverified stock trading rings operating on random messaging apps.
Yeah.
The people running these operations deliberately show off expensive phones, designer clothes, and just this entirely fabricated lifestyle.
I feel like they are essentially doing financial catfishing.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it, yes.
Right. Like they project this flawless, wealthy image just to lure you in. But what I don't get, what I don't understand is how so many smart, otherwise completely rational people fall for this.
What's fascinating here is the psychological manipulation behind the fraud. It's highly methodical.
How so?
Well, they prey on the completely natural human desire for security and status.
Mm.
But they don't ask for your life savings on day one. They start by giving you a small, really quick return on a tiny investment just to build trust.
Well, wow. So they actually pay you at first.
Exactly. You put in $50, and 2 days later, they give you $70. Your brain immediately registers this as proof that the system works.
Oh.
And once that trust is established, that's when they ask for the massive investment. And that's when they vanish.
That is terrifying.
It is. The source points out that the people getting wealthy off crypto and unregulated stocks on social media, they're just the tiny tip of the iceberg.
Mm.
Underneath the surface, there's just a massive graveyard of lost savings.
Which brings us to a harsh but I think very necessary truth in these videos. Nothing in this financial world is free. The source stresses the absolute necessity of a conventional, regular income source.
Right. A baseline.
Yeah, a regular job, a small business, a reliable service you provide. You need a steady baseline to actually support a family, rather than, treating your financial life like a series of lottery tickets.
A steady, predictable income is your primary defense mechanism against volatility. But, and this is a big, but even a steady income is incredibly vulnerable to the next internal trap, which is lifestyle inflation.
Oh man, this is a huge trap. Because as your income increases, your lifestyle costs creep up right alongside it.
Every single time.
Right. You get a raise, so you immediately move to a nicer apartment. You get an end-of-year bonus, so you finance a luxury car. And suddenly you're making twice as much as you did 5 years ago, but your savings rate hasn't budged a single percent.
You're just running faster on the exact same treadmill.
Exactly. But I do want to push back on the definition here just a little, because things naturally get more expensive. So how does a normal person differentiate between a reasonable cost of living increase, like, say, moving to a neighborhood with better schools, or buying higher quality food and toxic lifestyle inflation?
That's a great point. That distinction comes down to utility versus signaling.
Okay, utility versus signaling.
Right. A reasonable cost of living increase is paying more for an upgrade in your baseline security, health, or functionality.
Makes sense.
But toxic lifestyle inflation is when you start confusing your want for your needs, specifically because your income allows you to be careless.
Oh, I see.
It's upgrading the car, not because the old one is mechanically failing, but because you want to signal to your neighbors that you got a promotion. You are buying status, not transportation.
That is such a good way to frame it.
And the ultimate defense against this psychological creep, and really the baseline rule the source sets, is building an emergency fund.
Right. And 6 months is the magic number they establish. You need a liquid emergency fund covering exactly 6 months of your core survival expenses: rent, groceries, utilities.
The absolute bare essentials.
Yeah. Because if you lose your job tomorrow, your family's survival should not be in jeopardy for half a year.
And the mechanism of an emergency fund isn't just about paying the electric bill. It's about preventing a cascading financial failure.
What do you mean by cascading?
Well, if you don't have that cash buffer, a sudden job loss forces you to start selling off your long-term investments, usually at a terrible loss. Or worse, it pushes you into high-interest credit card debt.
Right, you start spiraling.
Exactly. A 6-month safety net gives you the psychological freedom to weather the storm without making desperate, highly destructive decisions.
Okay, so if the emergency fund stops us from drowning today, how do we make sure our daily habits don't slowly sink us tomorrow? This brings us to the architecture of our finances. How do we actually handle the paycheck the moment it clears the bank?
This is where it gets highly practical.
Yeah, because the source points out a mathematical blunder that happens constantly. People spend more than they earn without even realizing it.
It sounds impossible on the surface, right? Like, how do you not realize you are spending more than you bring in?
I know, it sounds crazy.
But the math they provide is stark.
Hmm.
If your monthly take-home pay is, say, $20,000 in your local currency, and your lifestyle actually costs $30,000, you are silently accumulating $10,000 in debt every single month.
It just sinks up on you.
Without strict tracking, the microtransactions, the daily coffees, the 5 different streaming subscriptions, the digital impulse buys, they all aggregate into a massive leak in your financial ship.
And to fix the leak, we have to track the water. The source suggests manual Excel sheets or using free budgeting apps. But they drop a really specific privacy tip here, which I liked.
Yes, the data privacy aspect.
Yeah, if you are cautious about your data, don't link your bank account directly to these tracking apps. Just use the free versions and input the data manually.
Which honestly has a psychological benefit too.
I totally agree. I actually think manual entry is better anyway, because the physical act of typing in a $60 restaurant bill forces you to confront the choice.
You feel the pain of the purchase.
Yes. And once you track it, they recommend organizing that data into the classic 50-30-20 rule.
Right. The 50-30-20 rule is a structural framework. 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment.
It's a classic for a reason.
It is. But let's look at the mechanism of that 50%. It is a hard structural cap. If your rent, utilities, and essential transport take up 75% of your income, you are structurally vulnerable.
Because there's no wiggle room.
Exactly. One minor emergency, one unexpected car repair, and you immediately fall into debt because you have zero margin for error in your monthly cash flow.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source suggests a 2-bank account strategy to enforce these boundaries.
I love this strategy.
It's so smart. You have one primary account for your everyday spending and a completely separate zero-balance account for your unused savings. The moment you get paid, you instantly transfer the 20% savings out of the main account.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. I look at this like putting the junk food on the very top shelf of the pantry. If you have to go into the garage to get a step stool just to reach the cookies, you're significantly less tempted to casually snack on them.
That's a perfect analogy.
By moving your savings out of sight, it forces you to go through a multi-step transfer process if you want to buy a jacket you don't really need. That friction is what saves you.
You are intentionally designing friction into your bad habits and removing friction from your good ones.
Yeah.
And this ties directly into another core behavioral concept from the videos, the SIP for savings. Now, SIP typically stands for Systematic Investment Plan, which is usually applied to mutual funds.
Right.
But the source brilliantly applies it to upcoming predictable expenses.
The example they gave made perfect sense. But it also made me realize how often we lie to ourselves about what an emergency actually is.
Exactly. Imagine a scenario where your annual home insurance premium is due in July, your car registration is due the same month, and your laptop suddenly needs a new battery.
A terrible month.
A very expensive month. And if you try to pay for all three of those out of a single month's cash flow, you will break your budget and likely go into debt.
Yeah, there's no way.
Because budgeting isn't just about surviving the current month, it's about looking at the horizon. The goal here is to prevent predictable annual expenses from masquerading as emergencies.
Like, you know Christmas happens in December.
Yes.
You know the insurance bill comes in July.
Yeah.
If you take a small fraction of those costs out of your paycheck every single month leading up to the due date, that's the SIP, then when July hits, the money is just sitting there in a designated fund waiting to do its job.
You are smoothing out the spikes in your financial life so your cash flow stays a flat, manageable line.
So, okay, we've organized the incoming cash, we have a budget, but what happens when you're dragging an anchor? Because past choices linger. Let's talk about the baggage debt and how we protect our downside.
For a young earner, the first major anchor is usually an education loan, and the source is absolutely adamant about this. The priority is paying these down as aggressively as humanly possible.
The tactics they suggest require real sacrifice, too. They talk about living at home with your family for a few years just to save on rent and throwing that extra cash directly at the principal.
Which is huge.
Yeah. They suggest paying an extra EMI, an equated monthly installment, every 2 or 3 months. And there's a hard rule here. Never take on a new loan, like financing a car, until at least 70% of the previous loan is completely wiped out.
That 70% rule is a lifesaver.
And plus, your total monthly debt payments should never exceed 30 to 40% of your total salary.
That 30 to 40% limit is really about maintaining agility. If 60% of your income is legally owed to a bank before you even wake up in the morning, you have lost all freedom to maneuver. You can't change careers, you can't take a risk because the bank demands to be fed.
It's basically a quarantine strategy for debt. You isolate it, attack it, and refuse to let it compound.
Exactly.
And speaking of compounding debt, we have to look at credit cards. Because people love to flash a premium credit card around at a restaurant like it's a status symbol or some VIP pass.
Oh, it's so common.
But it's not. It is a highly optimized tool designed to extract interest from you.
And if you don't understand how the tool works, you become the product. The golden rule the source provides for maintaining a pristine credit score is credit utilization. You should only use 30 to 35% of your available limit and pay the balance in full every single month.
I want to break down the mechanics of that fumble percent rule because it isn't just a random number they pulled out of thin air. How do the credit scoring algorithms actually interpret your behavior?
Well, the algorithm is constantly trying to assess your level of desperation.
Desperation.
Yeah. If a bank gives you a $10,000 credit limit and you consistently carry a balance of $9,500, the algorithm sees a liquidity crisis.
Oh, wow.
It assumes you are relying on that credit just to survive, which makes you a massive risk for a default.
That makes total sense.
Right. But if you only use $2,000 of that $10,000 limit and pay it off immediately, it signals to lenders that you have access to capital, but you have the discipline and the cash flow not to rely on it. You appear secure, and therefore, you are rewarded with a higher score and lower interest rates on future loans.
That's fascinating. Now, alongside managing this debt, the source pivots to pure defense, which is insurance.
Crucial step.
Yeah, they dedicate a lot of time to this, specifically emphasizing term insurance. They recommend buying coverage equal to roughly 100 times your monthly income.
It's a big number, but it's necessary.
And the math is staggering. For a healthy 25-year-old, a policy covering 1 crore, which is like 10 million rupees, might only cost about $1,000 a month, locking in coverage until age 65 or 75. But insurance is an incredibly crowded market. So why is term insurance presented as the absolute holy grail here?
This raises an important question about the fundamental mechanics of risk and return. Insurance agents will constantly try to push complicated hybrid products on you.
Like what?
Things like ULIP's unit-linked insurance plans or endowment policies. These products attempt to mix a life insurance payout with a stock market investment component.
Oh, so trying to do two things at once.
Exactly. They promise that if you don't die, you'll get all your premiums back with interest. But because they are trying to do two totally different things simultaneously, they do both of them terribly.
Like a spork. Not a good spoon, not a good fork.
Perfect analogy.
Oh.
A massive portion of your premium goes toward administrative fees and agent commissions, leaving very little to actually invest or insure. The returns are mediocre, and the death benefit is usually way too low to actually support your family.
So they're incredibly inefficient.
Extremely. Term insurance, on the other hand, is pure protection. There is zero investment component. If you pass away, your family receives a massive tax-free payout to replace your lifetime of lost income. If you live, the policy expires and you get absolutely nothing back.
Which feels bad to some people, but it shouldn't.
Right, because it is purely pricing the statistical probability of your death, which for a healthy 25-year-old is incredibly low. That's why the premiums are dirt cheap. Buying pure term insurance separates your risk management from your wealth creation, which is mathematically the smartest move you can make.
And they apply that same defensive logic to health insurance, too. Because a single severe medical emergency can entirely wipe out a decade of disciplined savings in a week.
Easily.
They note that buying a comprehensive health policy early might cost a young person very little per month. But the underlying reason to buy it early isn't just the cheap premium, it's the underwriting process, right?
Yes. When you buy health insurance, you aren't just buying coverage for today. You are buying your way past the waiting periods.
Ah,
Insurance companies know human nature. They know people will try to buy a policy the absolute moment they get a terrifying diagnosis. So to protect themselves, insurers enforce strict waiting periods, sometimes 2 to 4 years, before they will cover specific surgeries or pre-existing conditions.
2 to 4 years.
Yeah. If you wait until you feel sick to buy the policy, you will find out your specific illness isn't covered until, like, 2030. You have to lock in the coverage while your health is pristine.
All right, so our defenses are fully fortified, the emergency fund is full, the debt is quarantined, and the insurance shields are up. Now, how do we safely put our money on the offensive to actually grow? Because keeping cash under the mattress just doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't. And this brings us to the safety versus inflation paradox. Many cautious beginners think, I'll just leave my money in a standard checking or savings account. It's completely safe there.
Which is true, mostly.
Technically, yes, it is entirely safe from a stock market crash, but it's entirely exposed to inflation. If your money is earning 2% interest, but the cost of groceries and housing is rising by 6% a year, your actual purchasing power is quietly bleeding to death.
It's shrinking. So the source walks through the growth options. Standard fixed deposits or recurring deposits give you a modest return, maybe slightly beating inflation.
Barely.
Then there's the Public Provident Fund, or PTF, which is a government-backed retirement scheme. It's highly secure and offers decent interest, but it requires a massive 15-year lock-in period. You absolutely cannot touch that capital if you suddenly need it.
Which is a big commitment.
Yeah.
And then there's the discussion on gold, which is culturally a massive default investment for a lot of families. But the source issues a very strong mechanical warning here.
Yeah. So what does this all mean? The source specifically warns against buying digital gold on those really convenient mobile apps. They say it's a trap because of a 3% goods and services tax, plus the spread between the buying and selling price. But if the app is so easy to use, why does a 3% tax matter so much?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of compounding interest, we really have to recognize how small upfront fees destroy long-term growth.
Okay.
When you buy digital gold on an app, you immediately lose 3% of your capital to the government tax, and the platform takes a small cut on the transaction spread.
So you're losing right out of the gate.
Exactly. That means before the gold price even moves, you are down by roughly 4%. The asset has to appreciate by 4% just for you to break even and get your original money back. It's a massive, unnecessary headwind.
So what's the alternative if you still want exposure to gold?
The source strongly recommends sovereign gold bonds, or SGBs. These are bonds issued directly by the central bank. They perfectly track the market price of gold, but crucially, there's absolutely no GST applied when you buy them.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
It gets better. The government actually pays you an additional 2.5% fixed interest every year just for holding the bond.
Wait, really? On top of the gold value?
Yes. The catch is an 8-year maturity lock-in, though if you hold them in a demat account, which is essentially a digital vault for financial securities. You can trade them on the open market if you desperately need the liquidity.
That extra 2.5% yield on top of the asset appreciation completely changes the math over a decade.
It really does.
The source also dives into something a bit more complex called invoice discounting. They label it a moderate risk option, yielding a very attractive 10 to 12% internal rate of return over a very short period, like 2 to 4 months. What is the actual mechanism happening there?
Invoice discounting is essentially you, the retail investor, acting as a short-term bank for a business.
Okay.
Imagine a mid-sized manufacturing company. They just delivered a massive order to a giant corporation and they issued an invoice for $100,000. But the giant corporation has a policy where they don't pay invoices for 90 days.
Right. Pretty standard corporate stuff.
Exactly. But the manufacturer needs cash right now to make payroll and buy more raw materials. So they put that invoice on a discounting platform. You and a bunch of other investors pool your money to give the manufacturer $95,000 today. In 90 days, when the giant corporation pays the full $100,000, you get your money back plus a tidy profit.
Okay, so it's funding short-term working capital, but what's the risk? Why isn't everyone just doing this?
The risk is default. This is unsecured lending. If the giant corporation suddenly goes bankrupt or disputes the invoice, the money gets tied up and you might take a loss. It offers high returns specifically because you were taking on that credit risk.
Which perfectly sets up the source's philosophy on diversification. They use this fantastic, simple analogy, some bread, some cherries. You just cannot put all your financial eggs in one basket.
The bread represents your safe, foundational, highly predictable assets. That's your government-backed PPF, your fixed deposits, the cash in your emergency fund.
The boring stuff.
The boring, necessary stuff. The cherries are the growth engines, the assets that add flavor, volatility, and real upside. That's your stock market equity, your mutual funds, your invoice discounting.
And the source provides a baseline portfolio to visualize this.
Yeah, they suggest 25 to 40% allocated to equity, 25 to 30% in fixed deposits, 15% PPF, 10% in gold, and the remainder securing your insurance premiums.
By balancing the boring bread and the volatile cherries, you create a system that can absorb a shock while still outpacing inflation.
Perfectly balanced.
And we cannot close out a deep dive on investing without talking about the entity that always takes its cut, the government, taxes. The source briefly touches on the old versus the new tax regime and how you choose between them.
Right, so the new regime is designed for simplicity. Fewer calculations, lower baseline tax rates, but you give up the ability to claim deductions.
Oh.
The old regime, however, is where financial planning really happens because it allows you to utilize deductions to actively lower your taxable income base.
So explain how a deduction functionally shields your money.
Let's say you earn $100,000 a year. In a simplified world, the government taxes that full amount. But under the old regime, the government incentivizes certain behaviors. If you invest $150,000 or 1.5 lakh into your long-term PPF retirement account, the government allows you to deduct that from your income.
Okay.
So now the tax authority looks at your file and pretends you earned significantly less. You pay less tax today while simultaneously building your wealth for tomorrow. Between a standard $50K deduction, life insurance premiums, and the interest paid on education or home loans, you can legally and ethically shield a massive portion of your income from taxation.
Provided you are actually willing to sit down and do the math.
Exactly. It requires engaging with the numbers.
Which brings us full circle. So let's synthesize everything we've learned today. What the Life and Dot Lessons series proves is that true financial literacy is absolutely not about overnight wealth. It's not a viral stock tip. It is the methodical tracking of invisible leaks in your spending. It's defending your future with term insurance and a cash buffer. And it is patiently balancing the bread and the cherries so inflation doesn't slowly steal your purchasing power.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, one that builds on the reality of everything we've just discussed.
Lay it on us.
The source material repeatedly highlights how slow, steady, and frankly boring true wealth creation actually is. Analyzing term insurance policies, setting up automated transfers to a zero balance account, calculating your credit utilization. None of this gets likes on social media.
No, it doesn't look good on a yacht.
Not at all. But in a hyper-fast, anxious world that is entirely obsessed with projecting flashy, immediate wealth, what if the most radical, rebellious thing you can do with your life is simply choosing to be entirely bored by your money?
I love that.
Because boring money usually means a remarkably peaceful life.
The rebellion of boredom. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our challenge to you today, log off the social feeds, open up your actual bank statements, and take a hard, honest look. Look at the friction points, look at the leaks. Ask yourself, are you building a foundation that will hold weight, or are you just funding a lifestyle illusion?
The math isn't murky once you understand the mechanics.
You have the blueprints now. Go build something solid. We'll catch you next time.